So over the past few years my main console has been PlayStation, and during that time I can't lie, I've had a little bit of a trophy hunting addiction. I have completed and platinumed many games both on and off of the channel, which led to my Xbox just sitting there and collecting dust. Now for the past few years there has also been many Xbox exclusives that, because of trophy hunting, I just never got around to playing. Basically, if it didn't have trophies or a platinum, I was most likely not going to play it. Well, in today's video that changes, as a short while ago I finally decided to dust off my Xbox and set myself the challenge of downloading, playing and getting all of the achievements on a game that I'd always wanted to play, and that game was Redfall. Now I will say I did have my concerns going into this game, as it's something I hadn't played and seen very little footage of, but what I had seen and what I had heard suggested that it was an extremely disappointing game, and I was worried that I was going to be going into just a straight up unenjoyable experience. I am glad to say that while it wasn't by any means a great game, I did for the most part enjoy my time playing it, and considering 99% of that was completing the game solo, I guess Redfall hasn't done too much of a bad job. Now we've got a lot to get through in this video, so without further ado, this is how I got the platinum trophy. Wait, no, that's not right. This is how I got all of the achievements for Redfall. Enjoy. We begin the game and we find ourselves waking up on a ship where we come face to face with a vampire just across the room having a good old suck of some blood, but there's plenty to go around and his friend even comes in for a little refreshment too. Eventually we are noticed by the two vampires, but before they decide to suck us dry, a clearly more important vampire with a glowing halo comes into the room and tells us that we all belong to the vampires, and that even though the others want us dead, she wants us alive as she can use us. Before she gets a chance to do that though, a beam of sunlight comes through the window, and of course we all know vampires don't like sunlight, so she tells us that we will never see the sun again and makes an exit. We begin exploring the ferry, scavenging for any supplies we could find. We don't find much, but we do stumble across a handgun, so at least we can now defend ourselves. We then find the emergency door release and use it to make our escape from the ferry and into the world of Redfall. Immediately upon exiting, we notice that the sun begins enveloping itself in a black shadow, causing the world to get darker, and realise this is probably what the Halo lady meant. We begin making our way to the shoreline, during which we encounter some cultists who seem to worship the vampires and who left us no option but to take them out. We eventually make our way to shore and notice a flare in the distance, so decide to head there as it could be a possible distress beacon. This ends up leading us to the local fire station, where we find it under the control of a group of cultists with hostages trapped inside. I decide it would probably be easier to do this stealthily and begin by making my way up to the roof in search of a way in. We end up finding an open window in the skylight, and upon dropping in, immediately bring an end to my attempt at stealth. We take out the cultists, however we still had to make the station safe, and this involved getting the power up and running, so we head down to the basement, and it is here where we stumble across a vampire and have our first taste of combat with one. Won't lie, they deal a bit of damage, but seeing as this was just one, it wasn't too much to handle, and we eventually take him down and end him for good by staking him through the heart, which also unlocks our very first achievement of the game.
Last one's down and dusted.
We then turn the power on, save the people in the fire station and help them get to work on rebuilding it, which brings an end to the mission and rewards us with two things that I wasn't expecting to get this early on into the game. One was an unrivaled weapon, essentially what an exotic weapon would be on Destiny, and the second being the NIR+ Ultra achievement for actually getting our first unrivaled weapon. Now I've never played the game up until this point, so I have no idea if this was supposed to happen or if I was just extremely lucky. We then make our way around the station and get to know its inhabitants, as well as what vendors are available to us, something which I can't lie I won't be using a hell of a lot of because the prices are just absolutely ridiculous. Eventually, after meeting everyone, we decide that if we're going to start taking the fight against the vampires, then we will need some supplies, and are tasked to make our way over to the local supermarket to get those supplies. However, almost immediately after leaving the station, we notice two bellwether helicopters going down in the distance and realise that the supplies they are carrying will probably be 10 times better than what Tesco's are going to have down the road, so we make our way over to the crash sites instead. While making my way there, I made sure to check out as much as I can and gather up any supplies I could find for myself, and along the way I managed to unlock a couple of achievements. The first was the bad wiring achievement for disabling a tripwire using a rewire kit. And the second was the Wounded Whispers achievement for collecting our first Gravelock. Gravelocks are the collectibles of Redfall, and collecting all 100 of them results in an achievement. There are missables and they are spread out between the two areas of the map, 45 in Redfall Commons and 55 in Burial Point, that we will be heading to later on in the game. But that's as far as I'll get into it at the minute, as this will all come later on. We eventually find our first chopper, but have discovered that the cultists had already beaten us here, as thanks to the chopper's radio we discovered that the cultists are now heading towards the supply cache that it dropped off. So with that information in hand, we make our way to the cache to wipe out the cultists and secure it. After doing so, I noticed there was a safe house nearby, and so now decided it would be a good time to go and secure one, which is as easy as finding the generator and turning it on to provide power to the safe house. Doing so though does unlock the Home is Where the Heart Is achievement for securing our first one. After doing that, we continue to wipe out more cultists and vampires until we make it to the second chopper. This one though was a bit different, and rather than supplies we discover a bellwether profile of a man named Peter Addison, as well as discover that bellwether was actually sent in to burn and destroy the evidence of Redfall being infested with vampires. At this point we make our way back to the fire station without intel, and on my way there I decided to stop back off at the safe house I discovered and decided to use my free bit of time to secure the neighbourhood. This involves completing a mission for the safe house before taking down the neighbourhood's underboss. The mission for this safe house just so happened to be a bellwether supply drop, which is very similar to the mission we had just done. Once we get to the beacon, 2 supply drops will be called in, and while they are safely parachuted down from above, we just have to simply go and loot them. Now there is a missable achievement linked to this mission, and as there is only one other safe house in the game that has this mission, I wanted to make sure I got it done as soon as possible. All we had to do was make it to one of the 2 supply drops landing sites before the supplies land. Now I didn't get it done on my first attempt, but it did help me find out where the supplies were landing, so thankfully I was able to dashboard the game before it saved, allowing me to restart the mission from the beginning, and I managed to get it done on my second attempt, unlocking the Someplace to Be achievement. After collecting the supply drops, it was time to take down the underboss. This just so happened to be the Shade Tree Killer, which is a special vampire known as a siphon. They're not overly difficult to take out, but they have the ability to siphon your blood without actual physical contact, and it drains mega quick, so you have to either finish the job quickly or find cover to break line of sight. Upon staking him through the heart though, we unlock 2 achievements, the Sucks to Be You achievement for destroying my first siphon, as well as the Welcome to the Neighbourhood achievement for completing our first neighbourhood. Once back at the base, I decided to do an optional main mission to help out one of the survivors known as Dr. Terence Hunt. Now Terence's mother died 5 years ago to cancer, and in recent events his father has also been missing, leading him to believe that he was most likely taken by the vampires. And so he asked us to take his father's pocket watch and place it on his mother's grave for him. Very straightforward, we headed over to the cemetery and placed the watch on his mother's grave. Now there is a missable achievement we can get here, and that's for being just a straight up a-hole and stealing back the pocket watch from the grave. Doing so unlocks the I Spit on Your Grave achievement, and we also unlock the Blood Will Have Blood achievement for picking up my first blood remnant. Continuing on with the story, using the bellwether intel we had gained from the choppers, we discovered that a team of bellwether agents were sent to the Avon clinic in order to dispose of a film reel, and so we head over there to see if we can find this footage. Once at the clinic, we proceed to clear it of its vampire presence as we search for the bellwether team. Turns out they were centimeters away from destroying the footage, as we find the disposal guy dead in front of the incinerator along with the film reel right next to him. Of course, the only place we can actually play one of these reels ourselves is at the local theatre, and so we proceed to make our way over there, and on the way we come across and kill my first watcher for the ICU achievement. Once at the theatre, we discovered that it wasn't as simple as putting the film in, as the projector needed a new bulb, and so we needed to head down into the theatre's basement in order to get a replacement. Turns out this wasn't going to be simple either, as it was protected by another special vampire known as a Shroud. Not overly difficult, but does have a ranged attack which can deal quite a bit of damage, as well as being enveloped in a shadow, significantly reducing what we can see of our surroundings. Much like the siphons though, a stake through the heart brings it down for good, and also rewards us with another achievement.
No more vampires.
We then pick up the bulbs and fit them into the projector, which we can use to play the film. In the footage we learn that Dr. Addison, a scientist and executive at Avon, used a procedure he called the Gateway Sample Test and used it to transform himself into a vampire god called the Hollow Man, and then proceeded to spread the vampirism across Redfall. At this point, I then made my way back to the fire station with the intel, and once there, one of the survivors by the name of Joe asked me to help him rescue his brother that had recently been kidnapped by some cultists. He has heard over the radio that they were holding up in a house not too far from the station, so we proceed to make our way there. Once at the house, we make our way inside and hear someone calling for help in the distance. We proceed to check out the house, which oddly enough is completely empty, and manage to track down the voice to the basement. Upon opening the door that the voice was coming from, we quickly realised that it was a trap and managed to back away before being set on fire, and doing so nets us the Saw That Coming achievement, another missable for avoiding the trap during the abducted brother side mission. We contact Joe and let him know that we wasn't able to find his brother, so we continue on with the main story. We discover that someone is broadcasting emergency rescue plans across Redfall with promises of food, shelter and safety at Samuelson's shipyard. Suspecting that this is fake and is in fact cultists trying to lure people into a trap, we decide to investigate the signal and the shipyard. We begin by heading to the shipyard, and on my way there discovered that by using the UV gun I can stonify the vampires known as death mist spewers, and they do pretty much what their name suggests and spews out death mist. Stonifying and destroying one though manages to nab us the spit take achievement. We eventually reach the shipyard where we discover that the area is filled with cultists, and upon making our way inside find that they have also managed to trick and capture some civilians already. We decide it was best to approach the situation as stealthily as possible in order to avoid anything happening to the hostages, and once the cultists were cleared out we rescue the civvies and unlock another achievement for rescuing our very first hostage. We then head up to the office, retrieve the radio diagrams and make our way over to Dead Catch Records to investigate the source of the broadcast. Once there we clear out the cultists as well as the radio DJ responsible for the broadcast, bringing an end to their deception and unlocking the Skin of Their Teeth missable achievement for completing the mission after having saved all of the hostages with none of them dying.
Dr. Addison, be sure about it.
At this point I begin making my way back to the fire station when I find myself walking through an area with a vampire nest. This causes other vampires in the area to be relatively beefier than usual, and so thought it was best to probably go and clear it out. Our first step though was to find the door to the vampire nest, which ended up being pretty out in the open just off to the side of the road, and upon getting inside unlock the Enter of Your Own Free Will achievement for heading inside our first vampire nest. Now I can't lie, seeing as it was called a vampire nest, I expected this place to be absolutely swarming with the buggers, so thought it was best to stealth my way through. Although I only actually ran into 3 vampires throughout this whole nest and they were all sleeping, meaning I could easily sneak past. We eventually make our way down to the heart of the nest, protected by the 3 victims that were all tethered to it supplying blood, and we had to untether each of them. Doing so leaves the heart vulnerable, allowing us to destroy it, and in the process unlocks 2 more achievements. The Empty Nest Syndrome achievement for destroying a heart without waking or killing any vampires, and the Heart Attack achievement for destroying our first nest heart. And while on my way back to the fire station, I did manage to unlock the You Clean It Up achievement for killing a blood bag without triggering it to explode. Back on with the main story, Anna, one of the fire station survivors, has come up with a plan to track down the Hollow Man by zeroing in on one of his broadcasts, but to do so we needed to get our hands on the specialised analysers that could be found on the old research vessel known as the Tempestus. On our way there I took a little bit of a detour up to the Heritage Rock Lighthouse and disabled the foghorns. Not entirely sure what benefit it gives me during this mission, but it does manage to get me the missable achievement, Ask Not For Whom the Horns Blow. Missable achievement out of the way, we make our way over to the ship and get our hands on the research equipment, which funnily enough we then had to take all the way back up to the same lighthouse I had just come from. Once back at the lighthouse we connect all of the equipment up to the analysers, and while waiting for the data to come through are interrupted by a special vampire sent by the vampire gods known as a Rook. These boys were beefy and they had a lot of health, they dealt a lot of damage and they could teleport. I will say I actually really struggled here. as I made the mistake of not restocking on medical supplies. Eventually though, just like every other special vampire before him, we take him down and unlock the grounded achievement for destroying my first rook.
We got him.
And after taking down the rook, we collect the data for Anna and complete the mission. Next, I decided to complete another optional main mission which involved us tracking down Dr. Hunt, who we had helped earlier. Since then, he had received a message from his presumably dead father and went to the cemetery to meet with him and hasn't been seen since. Of course, you guys can probably already guess what's happened, and you'd be correct. Turns out his dad was a vampire and had lured the doctor there in order to kill him. Of course, we make sure to repay the favour, and upon doing so, unlock the Avenging the Good Doctor achievement. At this point, I turned my focus back to the Hollow Man, and thanks to the film we had recovered earlier, we learned that Dr. Addison was working out of a private lab located in his mansion home, and we are tasked with heading over there to find any clues we can as to how we can stop him and undo the vampire threat. As I make my way over there, I stumbled across a church that is overrun with vampires, one of them being another special vampire variant known as an angler, and much like the others, we get an achievement for taking down our first one. We eventually get to the mansion, and while searching for the clues, I stumbled across a couple of dolls that I picked up and returned to the doll's house in one of the bedrooms upstairs. Upon doing so though, we are instantly transported to another world where the house was pristine, and upon investigating come across 3 different entities known as Sin Eaters, and upon destroying our first one, unlock another achievement. Now each one of these Sin Eaters we destroy drop a visual memory known as a psychic echo. These echoes essentially act like memories, and in these echoes we discover that Dr. Addison experimented on his own daughter Amelia in pursuit of becoming the Hollow Man, and in the process causes the death of his daughter. After observing the final echo, an object known as a remnant is presented to us, and it's something that has a close connection to Dr. Addison, in this case being the needle he used on his daughter, and this will allow us to finally get to him and take him down. Before we can do that though, we are going to need to do a little bit of cleanup in order to get 3 underboss skulls needed to access his lair. So at this point I thought it'd be just better if I clear up the whole of Redfall Commons and do everything I needed to do now. This involved completing all of the main optional missions. Now I only had one more left, and that was to gather up a few items to place on a memorial in the fire station for Amelia, but I won't talk too much about it as it was just a simple fetch quest. Just know that we did a good job. We of course had to complete all of the side missions, and I'll say right off the bat, a lot of these side missions are quite enjoyable and are all quite unique and interesting, and often found they took you to some pretty cool locations that you may have otherwise never have visited. And dare I say it, but I would have actually liked to have seen more of them. Completing our final one in the Commons though does reward us with the Helping Hand achievement. Something else we needed to do, not just for achievements but for story progression, was to also make our way around the map, finding all the remaining safe houses and finishing their 2 missions in order to obtain the underboss skulls. Much like the safe house from earlier on in the video, very simple missions, usually just requiring us to head somewhere and kill a bunch of cultists or vampires. One of these safe house missions however we completed was called Metamorphosis, which has us preventing blood bags from feeding the vampire inside the chrysalis. Like a lot of missions and side content in this game, this too has a missable achievement, and that is to defend the chrysalis for the whole 2 minutes without it gaining any nourishment from the blood bags. Something I expected to be quite difficult but was actually quite easy, at least in this location it was anyway. 2 minutes later though, we unlocked the Starve the Beast achievement. And a short while after that, we take down our final underboss in Redfall Commons, completing all safe houses and their neighbourhoods, and unlock the Block Party achievement. We then headed into the forest and up to the hilltop gravesite, and using a flare gun proceeded to shoot the flare into the air, which ends up summoning a shroud known as the Wailing Shadow. Nothing really different from a normal shroud vampire, just a little bit beefier, and upon taking her down, unlock the A Cry in the Dark achievement.
Inferior!
At this point I knew I'd pretty much done everything in Redfall Commons now, with the only thing left being the grave locks. Now as I mentioned earlier, there are 100 of these locks to find, with 45 of them being located here in the Commons. One of these are missable though, and I think you guys can already guess where this is going. Yep, the missable lock just so happened to be the one that I neglected to pick up, and it can be obtained in the second optional main mission for Dr. Hunt, where he sends you to his house to retrieve a reward from the trunk of his car found in his garage. Of course, the grave lock is in the garage, and of course, I neglected to pick it up. Okay, so I'm adding this in post-editing, and just look at this, look, I walk over to it. I walk directly over to it and then proceed to ignore it and just fast travel back to the fire station. Absolutely unbelievable. Obviously, this means that I won't be unlocking the achievement for all 100 in this playthrough, so I had to absolutely ensure that I picked it up on my next. Anyway, with cleanup now out of the way, there was nothing left to do except to go and face the Hollow Man. Back at the fire station, Anna had managed to use all of the various intel we've gathered to locate the door that will take us to his lair. We make our way to his door, place the items on the altar, and make our way inside. It wasn't long before we come face to face with the Hollow Man, and it was boss fight time. Now this guy gave me some issues and managed to kill me a couple of times. His main attack is the Siphon ability, but this is much more powerful than a normal Siphon and doesn't leave you with a lot of time to break line of sight, so it did get me a few times. Now once we had done enough damage, he would also take a few breaks where he would become invulnerable until we destroyed all of the blood bags protecting him, during which he would also send shades after us, but they were an instant kill and actually helped me by allowing me to quickly gain enough power to use my Heartstopper sniper rifle that deals big damage against the boss. Of course though, the Hollow Man was no match for our Vampire Hunter, and as he tries to go in for one last attack, we managed to stake him in the heart, bringing an end to his reign and earning another achievement. And at that, we take our leave from his lair and return back to the fire station to celebrate our victory and unlock the neighbourhood revitalisation achievement for completing all of the main missions in Redfall Commons.
Me and some other survivors have...
Back at the fire station, we learn that thanks to taking out the Hollow Man, the radios across Redfall regain signal again, and Anna receives a distress call from the Redfall Maritime Centre located in Burial Point, Redfall's westernmost region. We, of course being the hero, decide that it's probably best if we go and give them a hand, and so proceed to make our way over to Burial Point, during which we find ourselves passing through an area known as the Psychic Woods, where we come across another projection of the man named Charles Beck. He tells us that someone by the name of Miss Whisper wants to see us and to locate and enter the red doors in order to progress through and satisfy her. Now this short little area has two missable achievements related to it, one to find and enter every red door without making a mistake, and another for entering the wrong door 3 times, represented by the blue doors. Obviously I would need to come back through here on New Game Plus anyway, so this time I entered the wrong door 3 times and unlocked the Nice Try trophy. We eventually make it out of the Psychic Woods and into the region of Burial Point, where it becomes immediately apparent that the Hollow Man wasn't the only vampire god, and that there seems to be 2 more in this region, each with their own band of cultists. Continuing on with the distress call, however, we eventually reach the Maritime Centre to find it trapped in something known as a blood tree with a bunch of vampires protecting it. We of course clear the area and discover that we can remove the tree by staking each of the 3 vampiric hearts connected to it. We destroy the hearts, releasing the Heartwood Fiend trapped inside, and upon taking him out, destroy the tree and unlock another story related achievement.
Hope everybody inside is okay.
With the vampire threat outside taken care of, we head inside and meet the survivors. They confirm that there are more vampire gods located in this region, and we of course decide to team up with them in order to bring them down. Our first objective was to head to a nearby farm that Bellwether had transformed into a base of operations and has been using to gather intel on both the vampire gods Miss Whisper and Bloody Tom. Again, there are 2 missable achievements that we can also unlock during this mission, with the first being how we gain access to the base. You see, just by heading to this location slightly west of the farm, we can find an old bootlegger tunnel that leads straight into the farm, and by taking this route instead, we unlock the Rum Runner achievement. We exit the tunnel and immediately find our first piece of intel, which was a Bellwether profile on a man named Thomas Kildare, also known as the vampire god Bloody Tom. We then head outside, where we stumble across a generator that supplies power to the base and its UV lights, and by turning it off allows the local vampires to invade the base and thin out the Bellwether herd. Doing this and leaving the lights off though will also unlock our second missable achievement of the mission once we complete it. A few moments later we head inside the grain elevator and find our second piece of intel, this time a Bellwether profile on a woman named Alice Young, who is now the vampire god Miss Whisper. and with all of that intel out of the way, we complete the mission and unlock the missable achievement Black Light Down. Back at the centre, using the intel we have gathered, we discover that the Bladewell campgrounds acts as the base of operations for Bloody Tom's cult and could be where we can find his remnant. Upon heading outside, we come across a messenger sent by Bloody Tom, and he tells us that we will want to join him once we've seen what they have and what he is capable of. He then offers us to join his cult and tells us that the cultists at the campgrounds will welcome us. We of course aren't going to join his cult, but it does provide us with the perfect opportunity to infiltrate the base and the cult much easier. Now, while making my way there, I'll take the time to mention here that there are 3 messable achievements related to this mission, 2 of which I'm going to be getting in this playthrough using the dashboard trick just to save myself a 3rd playthrough. Once at the campgrounds, we make our way inside, where we are told to make our way to the ranger station and speak with Erica Costell. We make our way over to the station and find Erica, where she tells us that before Bloody Tom will bring us into the cult, we will first need to pass a sniff test, and we are tasked with heading down to the sea caves and taking some of the blood from a special vampire that they have hooked up to a machine. This is where 2 of the 3 missable achievements come into play, however I'll only be getting one of these during this playthrough. You see, once we make it to the vampire milking machine, you typically just collect his blood and leave, and providing you don't shoot anyone on your way back, we'll get the Bloody Initiate achievement. However, we aren't going to be doing that, and instead head around to the back where we can poison the blood with a barrel of oil conveniently placed right next to it. Now, this will make the enemies in the cave hostile, and that's fine, we can take them out, but as long as we remain cool as a cucumber up top, we're able to use the poisoned blood in the blood offering for the Bellkeeper, which nabs us the Sepsis achievement.
I hope you're ready.
At this point, I then did the dashboard tricks, which returns us to the beginning of the mission upon loading back in, and as soon as we do, I go straight for my second missable, and that's the So Anyway I Started Blasting achievement for shooting a friendly cultist and breaking infiltration. At this point, all that's left to do is head to the crane and lower down one of Bloody Tom's doors, where we then kill the Bellkeeper and head inside. We make our way through an altered version of Redfall, and similar to the Hollow Man, come across 4 more Sin Eaters, each giving us a bit of backstory. After killing them all and listening to their psychic echoes, we are rewarded with the remnant we was hoping to find, Bloody Tom's bell, allowing us access to his lair. At this point, we couldn't do much more unless we had 3 underboss skulls, so I allowed Bloody Tom to live a little longer and instead turned my focus into finding Miss Whisper's remnant. Through our intel, we learned that before she was Miss Whisper, Dr. Alice Young was the director of the Windtree Wellness and Recovery Centre, and so we head there to search for her remnant. Once there, after dealing with the vampire and cultist presence, we proceed to enter her door, where we are taken to another altered version of the Wellness Centre. Continuing through, we once again come across more Sin Eaters and their psychic echoes that, like the others, reveals a little bit of her backstory. We do however learn through these that she was taking patients at the centre and performing experiments and tests on them, leading to one woman demanding to see the person in her care, which results in the doctor locking her away and letting her die of starvation. And shortly after heading a bit further down, we discover a vampire by the name of Gloria, which I'm assuming is who the woman wanted to see. Unfortunately, she wasn't exactly friendly and we had to put her down, but doing so unlocks the From the Shadows achievement. After killing Gloria, however, we do find Miss Whisper's key, which is the remnant object that we were looking for. We then head back to the safe house, where I decided to help out with restoring power to the lighthouse so that it can warn any ships of the danger in Redfall. Pretty simple mission. We had to head to the lighthouse keeper's home and get the replacement lamp for the lighthouse. Again, there is a missable achievement in this mission that requires us to get into his home and retrieve the bulb without him being alerted to your presence. Thankfully, I was playing as Jacob, so the cloak ability really helped me here, and I was able to sneak in and get the lamp unnoticed, unlocking the Under a Bushel achievement. Continuing on with the main story, seeing as we now had Miss Whisper's remnant, we now needed to actually locate her door, and Rebecca back at the Maritime Centre tells us that we can use the monitoring systems at the Coast Guard building to track her down the next time she manipulates the weather. Once again, we have 2 missable achievements that we can earn during this mission, with the first being the Lights Out achievement. Really basic, all we had to do was make our way over to the Coast Guard station and turn off the generator powering the UV lights. We then made our way inside the Coast Guard station and proceeded to clear out the bellwether agents until we eventually find and activate the storm monitoring system. After doing so, we then needed to head over to the annex to activate the weather radar, allowing Rebecca to tap into it and use it to track down Miss Whisper. However, once we get there, we discover it is blocked off by an impenetrable fog, and we needed to take out the 3 fog channeling totems in order to bring it down. While doing this, we also go for our second missable achievement for killing Bob the radio host after listening to his PSA in Taking Back the Airwaves, a previous mission in Redfall Commons. He can be found just here on the map for any of you wondering, and upon killing him unlocks the Bob's Final Hour achievement. We of course then take down the remaining totems, bringing down the fog and allowing us to gain access to the annex and its weather radar. With all of that out of the way though, we now had both remnants and door locations, so we could actually go and face both Miss Whisper and Bloody Tom, but we still needed to go around and clean up at least 6 of the safe houses in order to obtain the 6 underboss skulls needed in order to access their layers. So much like the first area, I took the opportunity to use this time and just clean up the whole map. I won't go too in depth as we covered what cleanup consists of in the first area, so I'm just going to be going over the things that gave us achievements. The first thing we did is finish up the remaining optional missions, with our final being What's in the Attic mission that, as well as being our last, also has a missable achievement. We headed over to Pastor Powell's house and began searching for the key to access the church's loft. And while doing so, I end up stumbling across the pastor's throw recording, which nabs us the missable achievement Revelations. After finding the key, we then head over to the church where we find the pastor was now a vampire and had been luring his followers into the loft and killing them. Killing him though finishes the mission and unlocks the contingency plans achievement for completing all optional missions in the game. With the main optional missions now completed, it was time to focus on the rest of the world and begin the cleanup of all of the safe houses and side missions, during which we unlocked quite a few more achievements. Our first was a missable achievement related to the Lost Unit side mission, which has us enter a Diacliff cave that was once a Bellwether surveillance camp. The Bellwether agents were dead, however they still had some valuable supplies and intel, and our job was to head inside and retrieve it. Now on top of it being filled with death mist, it also had a fair few laser tripwires. Thankfully again though, we can use Jacob's cloak to pass through the tripwires with ease, and completing the mission without triggering any of these tripwires unlocks the Eagle Eyes missable achievement. Our next missable achievement was also linked to another side quest. Now it's a simple fetch quest, so I'm not going to go too much into detail here. Just know we recovered Nurse Tran's mother's birdwatching book, and once we finish the mission, we then give the book a little read ourselves, unlocking the Curious Finch achievement. The next missable I went for was in the side mission Eclipsed, which eventually has us heading over to a trailer park to find some material stolen from the Black Sun. While here though, a vampire called Trevor Ash has been turned to stone by the UV light, and of course all we need to do is turn the generator off, allowing Trevor to get revenge on the nearby Bellwether agents, which nabs us the Enemy of My Enemy achievement. The next achievement wasn't actually related to a side mission and was more of a puzzle that we had to solve, albeit that puzzle solving involved shooting vampires, but as I was nearby I thought I'd get it done. All we had to do was make our way around to 3 different locations on the map where the Blackwood sisters are said to be hiding and take them out, each one giving us a key, and once we had all 3 we could then use them in their family home to unlock and investigate their bedrooms, where we find another key giving us access to the basement, and down in the basement we can find the Blackwood family portrait blood remnant that also rewards us with the Sisterhood achievement. And a short while later I actually end up completing my final side mission, unlocking the Good Samaritan achievement. The next achievement I unlocked required me to head to the Burial Point Cemetery and locate the Irvin Family Museum. Once there, simply ring the bell 7 times and it will open its gates, giving me access to what lies below, and funnily enough unlocking the miscellaneous achievement of the same name. And for our final miscellaneous trophy of the open world, we headed over to Jolly's seaside corner, and upon heading upstairs we find the Jolly's Red Receipt Blood Remnant in a container on the table, and upon looting it, unlock the Check Please trophy for looting the Table 12 Remnant. And seeing as my last safe house was located right next door to Jolly's seaside corner, I quickly completed my final 2 safe house missions, obtaining our last underboss skull and the neighbourhood watch achievement for completing all of the neighbourhoods in Burial Point.
Can't you do better than that?
Of course, something else I'll quickly mention is that during this time I also collected all of the remaining gravelocks, but as I missed the only one missable gravelock in Redfall Commons, I only had 99 out of the 100, so no achievement just yet. At this point we had now done everything we could, and so it was now time to finally bring down Bloody Tom and Miss Whisper. We began by making my way over to Bloody Tom's door, giving up the 3 underboss skulls and remnant, and making our way inside. Now the boss fight with Bloody Tom isn't actually that difficult. Most if not all of his attacks are ranged, and even though there are parts of the area covered in death mist, so that's a no-go zone, there are plenty of rock formations that provide cover from these projectiles, and to take him down it really is as simple as popping in and out of cover. It was a bit lengthy, but we eventually bring down Bloody Tom, and upon staking him we kill him for good and unlock another achievement. With Bloody Tom now dead, it was time for Miss Whisper to also meet the same fate. Once again we find her door, give up the 3 skulls and remnant, and head inside for the boss fight. Again, nothing overly difficult here, we just have to deal enough damage that will eventually force her to retreat above and become immune to damage. During this time she would fill in the area with fog, and we would need to find and destroy a totem in order to stop it. She would also spawn thralls in this area, but seeing as they were an instant kill, they were more helpful than they were a threat. Much like Bloody Tom, it was just a bit of a time consuming fight due to the amount of times that she would retreat, but we eventually managed to bring her down, ripping off one of her tendrils and using it to stake her in the heart, killing her for good and unlocking another achievement.
You turn me into your own personal book.
Now with the Hollow Man, Bloody Tom and Miss Whisper all eliminated, we now have inadvertently given the Black Sun complete control over Redfall, which is what she had wanted all along and the reason why she had left us alive. During a dream, however, we are contacted by the projection of Charles Beck that we have seen a few times throughout the story and has helped us in the past, and requests that we meet with him in person at the Harvest Festival. Seeing as it's the best thing we have to go on, we make our way over to the area where we find it absolutely swarming with vampires and cultists, one of these being a special vampire by the name of the Harvest Man, and by taking him down we unlock the Harvest End missable achievement. We eventually meet with the projection, who at this point actually reveals that he's Charles Beck, but the subtitles told me that hours ago, so it's nothing new to me. What is new though is that he's actually the twin brother of a woman named Claire, or who we know better as the Black Sun. Turns out Charles started having second thoughts in their pursuit for immortality, and so she betrayed him, turning him into what he is now. He then offers us a deal to find his 3 blood remnants to end his life in exchange for his sister's remnant, allowing us to finally take her down. We of course take him up on his offer and proceed to make our way around to the 3 altered spaces and watched all of the memories of Charles Beck play out, with each rewarding us with a remnant, and once we had all 3, we head back to Charles where we use the remnant to finally end his life, and staying true to his word, rewards us with the Black Sun's remnant, which just so happened to be his sister's choice of weapon when beating him over the head. With all 3 vampire gods down and the Black Sun's remnant in hand, it was finally time to head to her lair and put a stop to her reign once and for all. Outside we find her door surrounded by cultists and vampires, one of these being a blood bag by the name of Joe Creelman. Yes, the same Joe from the fire station. Yeah, it seemed like the vampires had got to him and turned him into a drinking fountain. Obviously, we put him out of his misery, which unlocks the Say Goodbye Joe missable achievement. We then give up the skulls of the 3 other vampire gods, as well as the Black Sun's remnant, and finally gain access to her lair and our final boss fight of the game. Now I can't lie, I was expecting a hell of a lot more from this boss fight. I was expecting for the Black Sun to be an extremely powerful vampire god with a plethora of different abilities that she would use in her attempt to take me down. But this couldn't be further from the truth. All the Black Sun realistically was a glorified version of one of the vampire hearts that could be found in the vampire nests. As far as I can tell, she doesn't have any attacks, and if she does, she never used them against me, meaning that her only form of protection was numerous special and non-special vampires in the area. And even they provided little to no challenge, as I was more than powerful enough to deal with them. In fact, my biggest challenge in this boss fight was not falling down one of the holes and succumbing to gravity. Even though it was easy, it still took a little bit of time, but we eventually untether her final source of blood, leaving her vulnerable and open for the staking, and unlocking the Good Morning achievement for finally taking down the Black Sun. Ironically though, it wasn't the stake that killed her, but the sunlight that she had tried so hard to block out. However, with the Black Sun finally down, that brings an end to the story. We had successfully managed to stop the vampire menace and bring back sunlight to the island of Redfall, and with that, we unlock another achievement.
They called me a miracle. They called me a savior.
Now I've got a few things I'd like to say about the main story and the game as a whole, but I'll leave that until the end of the video. But anyway, now that the main story was finally out of the way, it was time to go through it all over again. Well, at least 50% of it again anyway. As I said earlier in this video, there are some achievements where I had no choice but to get them on a new playthrough, and some that I just never managed to unlock first time around. So during this playthrough, I'd be knocking those remaining few achievements out of the way, with my first being the Faith Healer achievement for picking up my final Gravelock that I'd missed during the Dr. Hunt's reward quest on my first playthrough.
Now everything is under her eyes. Now everyone is forced to listen.
The second achievement unlocked was the Dexterity Save achievement, which I got by collecting the survival tips in Bill's house without triggering any of the trip mines in the side mission, Taking Back the Airwaves. For the third achievement, I was back in the Psychic Woods, and this time all I needed to do was go through all of the correct doors without making a mistake, and just to refresh your memory, it's these red looking doors right here. Once walking through all of them with no mistakes, we unlock the Right This Way achievement.
Hopefully Rebecca and her crew are still waiting for us at the Maritime.
And to wrap up my New Game Plus playthrough, my final achievement that I went for was the Bloody Initiate achievement for completing the full infiltration path during the One of Us main quest in Burial Point, which just involved getting the blood from the sea caves and returning it to the blood altar without killing anyone or contaminating the blood. This then brings us to our final 5 achievements of the game, and of course there has to be online related achievements in an almost completely dead game. What we needed to do is gain max level of trust with each of the 4 playable characters, which would reward us with 4 out of the 5 achievements, with the 5th requiring us to do the exact same thing, but all in the same lobby in a group of 4. Objective wise, nothing actually difficult and is pretty straightforward. What made it difficult is the fact that, again, no one is playing this game, so even posting in Xbox's own LFG highlighting that you are currently going for probably one of the hardest achievements in the game right now provides almost no help at all, seeing as nobody seemed to be interested. No matter how many times I posted, I just had no luck, which again wouldn't be an issue if the game had some form of matchmaking, but there isn't. All you can do is host a game or join a game that you've been invited to, so you are actually forced to find 3 other players who are actually willing to do it. Now, I wasted a fair few hours over a couple of days trying to get a team together to get these achievements, when eventually, as if sent by bloody Tom himself, we receive a message from another player who had seen at that point my 7th post, and he had told me that he already has 3 other players wanting to do it and that we would be the 4th. Of course, I leaped at the opportunity, and a few hours later we all grouped together and started grinding for that trust level. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about what we needed to do, as it was as simple as just killing vampires and completing missions for XP while being near each other, so pretty much the exact same thing we've been doing throughout the whole of the game, just with other people. Now I will say that this was my first time playing online in Redfall, and I will say it does make the game a lot more enjoyable. Thankfully I was with 3 absolute legends and we had quite a laugh going through the game, but just having people there with you makes the whole thing feel less lonely, and I often found that there would be more vampires than there typically would be, and even for a bit of a challenge we all thought it'd be fun to play on the hardest difficulty, though I admit it wasn't too hard. Now all in all we ended up spending about 2 hours in total grinding for that trust level, and although the Devinder achievement popped slightly early, we did end up locking 4 of the trust related achievements, including arguably the now hardest achievement of the game in my opinion, being the Friends Till the End achievement. That left us with one final achievement, and that was the Blood Brother achievement for maxing out trust with Jacob. As I was the only one playing as Jacob in my previous group, I wasn't able to get that achievement. Funnily enough, my real life brother had recently downloaded the game to see what it was like and offered to give me a hand getting my final achievement, which just involved going through the game again, basically everything I'd just done for the previous trust achievements. This time though it did take slightly longer, as it was about half hour into the game that I realised I wasn't gaining any trust because I was also playing as Jacob, leading me to having to create a new character, which this time I went with Layla and actually really enjoyed her. 2 hours later though, and almost at the exact same point in the story, I unlocked my final achievement in Redfall, and I did all of this so you guys don't have to. Now here's my thoughts on the game, and honestly it's a weird one. In one way I am quite disappointed, as I know Arkane is capable of much more. I've played and loved many of their previous games, for example the Dishonored series, hell I've platinumed the first game, Prey, another phenomenal game that I've platinumed, I've even platinumed Deathloop. They are great games, so I'm disappointed to see that this game fell so short of the mark. The story had massive potential but never really delivered. Throughout the story, none of the vampire gods really have any development. In fact, none of the characters really have any major character development outside of a few missions, and it just made a lot of them forgettable. Granted, you can find a lot of lore through various documents and recordings throughout Redfall, but even then, it doesn't really add much. To top it off, you don't even have any animated cutscenes, they're literally just still images, and look, I'm not saying that they're bad, but they're not something that I expect from a AAA game, especially one coming from Arkane. On the other hand though, there are many things that I did thoroughly enjoy about this game. The world of Redfall, at least to me, was extremely interesting. I loved exploring, and I feel like a lot of time and care was put into adding detail and making it feel like a genuine town, well, if that town was overrun with vampires anyway. The combat is your standard combat really, nothing majorly stand out, but nothing to really complain about, it gets the job done. The AI, although I feel like was better than what everyone said it was at launch, it still wasn't amazing, and again, considering Arkane have made games like Dishonored, we know they are capable of better AI. Although I'm not going to complain too much, as sometimes it worked in my benefit. The multiplayer was actually fun, but the biggest letdown is there is no matchmaking, so yeah, if you need those achievements, or if you're purely just going for those achievements, you need people to do it with. You need some friends, or just anyone willing, otherwise, yeah, they're not getting done. But anyway guys, that was my experience and thoughts on Redfall after getting all of the 66 available achievements, and I hope you have all enjoyed. My first video on the channel where I attempt to 100% an achievement list that isn't on PlayStation, so if this is something you'd be interested in seeing again, let me know in the comments below. And also be sure to tell me what your thoughts are on Redfall and whether this is a game that interests you. Of course, if you guys have enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button and share this video around. It shows your support, and your support is always appreciated on the channel. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on to stay up to date with everything I upload. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.